Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Float, Odyssey, Telegram, Twitch, TikTok, and the Prepper Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is November 24th, 2022, and this is episode 208 of the Workshop Podcast. Whole bunch of twos in there. Well, we are getting closer and closer to Christmas. Merry Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Turkey Day to all of my American community members. We love you, even if you do celebrate Thanksgiving on the wrong day. But everybody needs to remember the most important thing on American Thanksgiving is the Mystery Science Theater 3000 Turkey Day Marathon. So if you haven't watched any of that this year, you're missing out. Happens every year. Let's get the announcements out of the way, and then we got a few things we're going to do tonight. First, the Prepper Broadcast Network Christmas catalog just came out. Kind of cool. Reminds me of the old-fashioned days when the Sears catalog would come in and you'd go through it and see all the cool things you wanted for Christmas. You know, not as hard up as my father was when he was a kid and they had to use the Sears catalog for toilet paper, but I still have fond memories of it. So check that out. We love to try to create a circular economy here where we keep as much money within people we trust, people we value, people we want to support. So check out the PBN Christmas catalog. I will make sure there's a link in the description so you guys can. Tonight, this is Thursday. That means we have a sponsor for tonight's show, and it is the try that again, Tim. It is the Protection Dog Podcast from my buddy Joel Riles from Fortress Canine. Hello, Kentucky Sustainable Living. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. So Joel runs the Protection Dog Podcast, and it is a hell of a lot more than just protection and dogs. Yes, he talks a lot about dogs, but he also talks about getting off your ass, getting motivated, getting shit done, all while he has a glass of whiskey in one hand and a cigar in the other. That man has been through it all. He has been through the ringer. He has come out the other side a better person who has created something incredible in his life, and support him. Go by, check him out. His link will be in the description as well. Subscribe to his podcast, and of course, check him out on Instagram and TikTok. And also, guys, I've been getting shirts in the mail left, right, and center. So I guess we will start a Special Operations Equipment Tactical Shirt of the Week. This week's shirt says, "This is the government our founders warned us about." Not my founders, but the sentiment is 100% the truth, guys. We all know about it. Love these shirts that John and Amanda send to me. Thank you. If you want to pick any of that stuff up, go by originalsoegear.com. And of course, that is a message that should be remembered on Thanksgiving. Hey, guys. So tonight we are going to talk about some 90s forgotten gems. I look back, it's been over a couple of months since we did a movie episode. One more quick thing I wanted to get in there for you guys. Today's tool is the Thermacell Mosquito Repeller. It's on sale, Black Friday special, regular $20 on for $16. Link is in the description. I love that. We sit outside all summer and it keeps the mosquitoes away, and it's inexpensive. Hey, Renegade Butcher, happy Thursday to my Canadianite friends, he says. Happy Thanksgiving to you, brother. Always appreciate it. So I had a few things I wanted to, I had a boostergram sent to me this week. I want to deal with that. Give you kind of a weekly workshop update because there's not going to be a Saturday live stream this week. I'm going away with my lovely wife to do some Christmas shopping, but you guys will have a Friday and a Saturday pre-recorded episode for you. Looking forward to getting those out in the stream for you. And Sunday will be, I got a big guest Sunday coming, Michael Jordan, the Bee Whisperer. Yeah, I know what you thought. No, he's coming on to talk about all things apiary. And if you have any questions about raising bees, anything about mead or honey or anything like that, send them my way because I'm excited to have that man on here. So first things first, I got a boostergram from a guy named Garbage Man. So if you're out there listening, Garbage Man, I appreciate you. You know what he asked me? He said, "Tim, I heard you say an episode a little while ago that you had an old fashioned. You really like old fashions." He said, "I had one at a bar I loved and I can't find anyone to make it since." He says, "Love what you do. Keep it up." So I figured, hey, what better way than to make my old fashioned for my live stream live on the air with you guys this evening. So I'll share you with my recipe. I threw it's simple. I don't know. It's just kind of a traditional recipe that I've kind of tweaked the amounts with a little bit, and I enjoyed them. First, I got to thank my buddy Lou, the Pizza Joint owner from New Jersey, who took me out for supper when we were in Tennessee and introduced me to the joys of old fashions, and that has become my drink of choice. So, like I said, the recipe, or whatever you want to call it, is in all the descriptions, so you guys can check it out. But we start with an empty glass. You guys have aromatic bitters. This is where we go. Love this stuff. 2 or 3 splashes into the bottom of the jar. I always like to drink out of a mason jar. I don't know why. Okay, next thing we need. So that's aromatic bitters. Next, simple syrup or some sort of version. 1/4 of an ounce. So that equals 2 pumps. 1, 2, just like that. Okay. Then a cherry. See if we can find our spoon there. I like to put the cherry. So I keep shelf-stable cherries and orange slices here in the workshop because, well, it's just easier. I like to let the orange soak down in the liquid. I don't usually eat it. I just like the flavor. It gives it kind of a, I don't know, Christmassy flavor. The aromatic bitters has a, I don't know, cloves kind of taste to it. So that's all there is for that, for flavoring. And then we grab, tonight we have John E. Fitzgerald Larceny Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Brought this back, 46% alcohol. Brought this back from North Carolina when I was down for prepper camp. And I like a good solid 2 ounces. So we'll go like this. Let's see. There we go. Ooh, that's a little far, but hey, whatever. So that's it. And then we give it a stir with our straw like that. And then we top it to the top with ice. And that's all there is to it. So I hope that helps. I mean, that is as dead simple. I'm no expert. I like my bourbon. I like my old fashions. That is a very pretty drink. That's it. So 2 ounces of bourbon, 2 pumps of simple syrup, 2 dashes of bitters, a cherry, an orange section, stir it all up, top it off with ice. And there you have it. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that is good. Anyway, so I hope that helps. Bartending with Tim. Yes, I hope you like that, Chris Dixon. Something different. We always got to try something different. But Garbage Man was nice enough to send me a boostergram with some sats. And even if you don't send it with sats, I don't care. If you take the time to message me or comment on something, I will do my damnedest to give you a proper response. So there we are. Thus concludes the evening session of Bartending with the Toolman. Next. Oh, yeah, and there's a couple other things I wanted to mention about an old-fashioned. If you like it a certain way, it's okay to ask to have it made that way at the bar. So if you go to a bar and be like, I just want an old-fashioned, well, you may or may not get what you want, because some places will make it with a muddied or muddled sugar cube. They put it down in, add a little water, and just go sometimes. Some people even use egg whites, which I've never heard of or tried. I don't know, whatever you're up for, but it's totally fine. And bartenders don't get turned off. If a bartender acts like a dick because you ask him to make it the way you want it, that's what they're there for. I watch a lot of bartenders on TikTok, and they are totally cool with, yeah, this is how I like it, because they want to make a drink that you want to drink, because then you're going to drink more of them, and you're going to come back and you're going to tell your friends. So just remember that. No big deal at all. I was listening to an episode of Mike Rowe's podcast a while ago. He had John F. Kennedy's wife's personal bodyguard on there. He was in his 90s. He drank some kind of girly sounding drink, a pink something or other. And the dude kept a card in his front pocket of his suit jacket that he would hand to the bartender and say, this is what I'd like to drink. That's a man that knows what he wants. And if you want to drink and you want a drink that tastes the way you want it, experiment till you find it. And then when you go out, say, hey, this is what I'd like. Can you do it? Sure. All right. This week in the workshop, or the weekly workshop, I got a lot done. I have been a busy little beaver. And yeah, I wanted to share a few things. Got some windows installed over at the daycare. We are getting there. Oh my God, the electrical is taking so much longer than it should, but it is what it is. I had to clean up the whole upstairs of the daycare last week. We had old powdery insulation everywhere. Had to get that cleaned up because we had photo shoots up there with the kids. It's really, really starting to come along. I insulated my garage, which is exciting. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I got the roof and the walls 100% insulated, and I started putting chipboard up on the walls as well, which is extra exciting. So probably by, maybe not this weekend, but the first of next weekend, I'm going to have a fully insulated garage that has all new sheathing, or whatever you want to call it, chipboard all the way around the inside. And the funny thing is, so I recorded my first tour review yesterday, the day before, in the garage, used all the same gear, and it came out sounding completely different. Almost, I don't want to say muffled, but there's no echo behind it, which I'm not used to. So with all the insulation and the new sheathing in there, it totally keeps it, I don't know, just different. I got to get used to it. Dixon wants to know, is the daycare in the old church? Yes. So I probably, I think Chris has been here, and I think I showed him, but I may not use those, or I might use those terms interchangeably. We call it the old church, and it was a church at one time, which means the building was built by all of the parishioners any way they saw fit. So you can just imagine some of the fun we've run into. But yeah, it is what it is. So my office, you can't see it back here. I'm in the midst of purging a ton of shit because I'm going to renovate. I'm taking 4 closets out behind me and going to expand the whole thing so I can kind of have a permanent shooting area. I'm going to have a little bar set up, a little place for my vinyl records. So it's going to be a little man cave. Plus, it'll give me some time to figure out exactly how I want to do this live stream background thing. So it's coming. I got my wood stove completely repainted and ready to go. The only thing I have to do is scab in a some kind of chimney. So it's coming. I'm pretty excited. I cannot wait. You know, I have a gas furnace in there now, so I don't need any extra heat. But who doesn't want a wood stove with glass doors to sit down and enjoy once in a while? And it's going to be part of the background of my new studio shooting space in the workshop. So that's going to be kind of cool. A couple other things. Lots and lots of shit happening all at once. But we are in the process of finalizing. Well, we've signed the contract. It's all done. We're buying 2 rental properties with a total of 3 units in it. Chris Dixon, where he stayed last time he come up, it's one of those places. They're old. They're in rough shape. We're going to fix them up. We're going to rent 2 of them, and we're going to flip the one trailer. Well, not literally flip it, but we're going to fix it up and sell it and make some money off it. So I'm rather excited. Really excited, actually. So, yeah. And we have been, just because, I don't know, I'm excited. We've been looking at land in Tennessee, and we're really close at picking up a 10-acre plot down there, which I'm so excited about. We'll see. If it works out, it works out. So, yeah, I will have more info for you guys next week, where it is, what's going on. But I am excited about turning it into a getaway property, a bug out location, whatever you want to call it. I'm just excited to have some property down there. So it's coming. You guys talked about it. I talked about it, and we're making it happen. So that is the weekly workshop. Get that out of the way for you guys. So tonight, I got looking back. I should have done the math, but it has been a hell of a long time since I did a top 5 movie episode. So I thought, hey, guess what? It is time to get back into that. Now, let's see if we can get things mixed up here a little bit for us. Minimize a couple. And yeah, so tonight we are going to do the top 5 lesser known 1990s SHTF, shit hit the fan films. Now, some of these are a little more loose in the shit hits the fan kind of design. Like, I don't know. You'll see what I'm talking about as we go along. They're all good movies. They're all movies I enjoyed thoroughly, most of which I watched back in the day on VHS in my friend Lynn's living room. We used to go down there. They had an old floor model television. We'd all pile onto the couch. Well, no, back up. So this is how it used to go. It would have been like 95 through 98, 99. We used to go down to Marshall's convenience store, and they had a wall of VHSs all along. It was just a good little spot. It wasn't technically a movie rental place. It was a convenience store with movies in it. So we'd go down, we'd pick out a movie, we'd all come back, we'd put it into the VCR, the floor model television. We'd all pile in, turn every light off we could so it was as dark as we could, and we'd sit down and we'd watch films. And I think 4 of the 5 in this list were something I watched down there with my friends. So they all have kind of a special place in my heart. But I thought it'd be fun. So let's start out with, here, let's do a share screen. And after this episode's over, I will go back because every time I do one of these episodes, I have someone who says, hey, Tim, could you put the list in the description? And I'm getting better at making sure that shit shows up in the description. So I will do that for you. I just didn't want to spoil it tonight before the episode went out. So let's see if we can share screen right there. There we go. Okay. So number 5, and these are going to be in, I don't want to say no particular, they're in reverse order. So all of these are movies I enjoyed, some more than others, but it'll go 5 through 1 as in which one is my favorite of the list. Now, it doesn't mean there won't be another follow-up to this episode down the road, because there will be, because the 90s has such a soft place in my heart for, apocalyptic, shit hit the fan movies, that kind of stuff. So if you guys haven't seen this one, number 5 is Strange Days. It was released in 1995, and it takes place on New Year's Eve, 1999. It kind of takes a very short look into the future as to how humanity is crumbling and falling apart, and at the turn of the century. So it's kind of cool. I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown, but it's got Ralph Fiennes, who's kind of a lesser known now, but he was pretty popular back then. It's got Angela Bassett and, of course, Juliette Lewis, who was just coming off of a huge star turn in Natural Born Killers. She's an odd one. She plays Audrey in the Christmas Vacation movie. I'll take her or leave her. She's not my favorite actress in the world, but this was at the height of her popularity. So she had that going for it. Now, the film was actually partially written and directed by an Oscar-winning director, Catherine Bigelow. I think she was the first female to ever win an Oscar for directing. She won it for The Hurt Locker in 2010. But this film almost killed her career. She is the ex-wife of James Cameron, who did a lot of rewrites and editing on this film without getting credit for it. But this was kind of in her back pocket. This was a film she really wanted to make. So she went ahead and made it, and it unfortunately bombed. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. There is a ton, I'll say this probably a bunch of times tonight, but there are a ton of these cheesy mid-90s films that just ooze 90s kind of, they're just all about the 90s. They just feel like 90s through and through. Just going to shout out to Chuck Peoples. Hey, Chuck, how are you? Chuck, have you, I wanted to get you on the show, bud, and I sent you an email, and I think I typed out your email incorrectly. So if you can throw it up in the comments for me, I will email you again, and I'd like to get you on the show. So yeah, I think every movie on this list is rated R, which probably tells you quite a bit about the movies we loved to watch when we were teenagers. Pipin says it screams 90s. Holy shit. I mean, just look at it. The fonts with the orange and the blue, the kind of stretched out, not quite grungy text, but it's there. It's got like that blue, black and white feel to it. I mean, the whole, just the cover screams 90s. So 66 on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics were not real happy with it. 73 audience score. So people liked it a little better. Chris Dixon says everything was rated R in the 90s. You're not wrong, brother. And almost everything that was good was rated R in the 90s as well. Yeah, there was very much that, that 90s rated R aesthetic with all these films. And like I said, you'll start to see a pattern as we work our way through. Now, there was a huge cast in this, but it had, like I said, Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis, also had Tom Sizemore and Vincent D'Onofrio from Law & Order Criminal Intent. And he also played Kingpin in the Daredevil series. Really good actor. One of my favorite actors. He always kind of has this tilted look to himself. I don't know how else to explain it, but he just always looks a little bit off. So yeah, this one, it has a plot. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it. It has a plot that's kind of a mix between The Matrix, Total Recall, and another film we're going to talk about tonight, which I'm not going to, screw it up quite yet. So the whole plot is there's a dealer for illegal CDs. Can you imagine? Oh my God. Illegal CDs where, where people are sharing memories and sensations. So the idea behind it is you take a CD, which was actually a souped up mini disc. If anybody out there remembers mini discs, put your hand up in the comments or let me know, because I had a mini disc player in like 2000 in college. I used some of my student loan to buy it. Don't tell my mom. That was years ago. Anyway, so it was a souped up mini disc player that you could supposedly inject in your body to give yourself fake memories or fake sensations, similar to Total Recall in a sense. The name for the movie comes from, if anybody's a Doors fan out there, they had an album called Strange Days. So the name for it came from that. Pipin says mini discs, roll on the floor laughing. Oh, man, I was all about mini discs back in the day. Just loved them. I don't know why. I think it's just because they were cool and they looked futuristic and whatever, right? But so this film, it was filmed over 80 days, which is about standard, almost 3 months for filming. 77 of them were night filming. The whole movie takes place at night, which is, that could take its toll. I can imagine that would get under your skin, shooting all night and sleeping all day after a while. But so it was kind of a dystopian view of the future. And when you look at so many of these movies that look toward the future, they go one of two ways. The first way is George Orwell's 1984, and the other one is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Now, if you haven't read them, 1984, of course, we all almost know about that. It's extreme government overreach to the point where government controls the narrative and everything that you believe, do, eat, say, sleep, everything. So that's the first. The other one is similar, but the whole idea is everyone is consumed by, controlled by pleasure, whether it's sex, drugs, or rock and roll. No, I had to roll that one out of there. So this one goes more towards Huxley, of course. And the whole idea is the extreme lengths that people will go to feel something, something that isn't real, basically borrowed sensations, borrowed memories. And if that doesn't strike you, they were maybe 20 years too early. But if that doesn't strike a chord on what we're dealing with and what society has kind of deemed important today, I don't know what does. So yeah, the whole thing, it talks about humanity becoming distracted by technology. In the end, what really struck me with this film was how they thought the world was going to. Do you remember how excited everybody was about 1999? I mean, we're all scared about the Y2K bug, or at least concerned about it. But everybody was so excited about what the millennium was going to bring. And then it just turns out it's another day, right? Everybody goes and parties like it's 1999, and then you wake up and it's 2000. So they actually, one cool piece of kind of technology, trivia, was they threw a rave on the streets of Los Angeles at night. People paid $10 a pop to show up. They had 10,000 people show up. And that's what is filmed in this movie. So if you want to go back and see, 90s hedonism at its best with a post-apocalyptic stance, check it out. They ended up having to cancel the rave early because, believe it or not, a whole bunch of people got into ecstasy and went all crazy. Kind of true to life. It was like fiction mirroring reality. Pippin says, sounds like on the nose phone. Yeah, very true. So here's the thing. And this is a good movie. And I'll totally say, if you've never watched it, go back and watch it. The tagline, or somebody from Interview, Graham Fuller, says it's a sexy kinetic thriller. Whatever the hell that means. That's just, cinema speak for it's interesting, but I didn't really like it. So yeah, but it's totally worth going back to watch. It had a budget of $42 million and it only made $8 million back. So you can imagine why. They said it almost killed Catherine Bigelow's career. And like I said, thank goodness it didn't, because she ended up going and making The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 and ended up winning an Oscar for one of them. So that's pretty darn good if you ask me. So yeah, so number 5 is Strange Days. If you guys have, while we're going along, yeah, oh, that's a good one, Chris. Chris Dixon says the 90s, where tech took the place of Coke. Yes, that you're not wrong there at all, brother. So yeah, like I said, especially these first two are cheesy, but they had a very, very soft spot in my heart for 90s cheese. Now, I didn't put the net in there. I probably could have, but I'm probably going to do like a, if you guys, probably like a conspiracy based episode of this, 90s conspiracy films or something along, maybe just conspiracy films in general. So if I do that, I'll definitely have Sandra Bullock's The Net in there, simply because it's so much fun watching her flip out a laptop in 1995 that looks like it weighed 20 pounds and sit on the beach and pretend to use the internet, I guess. One of those things. How times have changed. Hey, guys. All right. Next is Johnny Mnemonic with brother Keanu Reeves in it. I mean, he's a master of his craft. The dude loves to put himself into the roles that he plays. He'll probably never win an Oscar for his acting. You ever seen him in, was it Interview with a Vampire he was in, or Bram Stoker's Dracula? Whatever one it was, he was, let's just say, not the highlight of the film. But he knows how to make an action film. Between Speed and all the John Wick movies, The Matrix, which is one of my all-time favorites, that man knows how to make an action film. So he did Johnny Mnemonic, which surprisingly has a very, very similar theme in some ways to Strange Days. It also has some strong similarities to The Matrix. And if you haven't seen this, it is cyberpunk 90s to a T. So much so that a couple of years ago, they made a video game called, see if I can find it here. I remember the poster. It was blue and yellow. I want to say it was like Cyberpunk 2047, something like that. I'm probably a little bit off. And one of the main playable characters was a guy who was transferring data in his brain. And the guy who did the voice was none other than Keanu Reeves. So that is if you haven't seen this film, again, this is what he is. He is a high-tech data carrier where he goes and somebody pays him to upload a ton of data to his brain. Again, very mid-90s, right? And then he carries it, through the airport, wherever it happens to be. And then he delivers it to the people on the other end. But he's always pushing his limits because he always wants to use more of his brain than he's supposed to. And it gives him things like nosebleeds and, brain cancer or something crazy like that. Chris Dixon says, damn well that Carrie Ann Moss made The Matrix and Sandra Bullock made Speed. Yes. Yeah. Mid-90s boy and me absolutely did. Yes. Pippin said he had to delete his childhood memories to carry the data. So we're going to talk about this because it's really funny. Because when you look, there's something fun about looking back on what people thought the future would be in the past, right? So we'll get to it here in a second. This thing is full of bad mid-90s CGI. The kind of stuff that, fit right in with Lawnmower Man, if you've ever seen that. Just, it was like, hey, we can make this with a computer, so let's do it. When the technology wasn't there yet. So yeah, it's so bad, guys, but it's almost so bad it's good. Again, rated R, came out in 1995, 96 minutes long. It has a whopping 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the critics thought very lowly of it, with an audience score of almost twice that, of 31. I got looking. The film is set in the very, very distant future of 2021. So yeah, I always get a kick out of that. It's kind of like going back and watching the second Back to the Future, and it took place in, was it 2015, I believe? So, we're getting old when these films that were based in the very distant future are now technically based in the past. Good evening, Nate Lemaster. Coming in late, he says, happy real Thanksgiving. Happy second Thanksgiving to all you Americans. Yes, very good. I'm going to share with you guys a funny story because I can, and it's my show, and you'll appreciate it. Years ago, when I was working at the hardware store, in my small town, they were getting ready to make windmills. They were getting the bases up and everything, and we had a whole bunch of Americans. They'd all come up from Texas who were working on the windmills. This was like the first week in October, and he came in one day, and I'm making conversation. I said to the dude, I said, hey, when are you guys going to be done building those windmills? And he says, oh, we'll be done and home by Thanksgiving. And I said, wow, you guys are going to be quick. Less than 2 weeks and you'll be done. And he gets this perplexed look on his face like, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, no, man. He said, Thanksgiving, like the 20-something of November in like 6 weeks. And I look at him and I said, Thanksgiving in November? That has got to be the weirdest fucking thing I have ever heard. And I don't think he got the joke or he didn't understand because he didn't know that we celebrated Thanksgiving in October. And yeah, I just had to mess with the dude a little bit because I was a dick like that. So anyway, back to Johnny Mnemonic. It made $19 million on a $26 million budget. You can't do that Hollywood math for very long and consider these films a success. This was definitely considered a flop in the box office, a flop critically. It has found itself a bit of a cult following since, but really not, it doesn't hold up very well. It's fun. Okay, again, if you're looking for something to watch on a Sunday afternoon, you've never seen this before, go back and watch it. You may not get the same nostalgia I had because, you didn't watch it on VHS back in the mid-90s, but it'll still throw you back for a loop for sure. So the entire population, other than a few, and this is where it is very similar to the Matrix. So the entire population is connected to the internet or whatever they wanted to call it at the time. Then you have a guy, Keanu Reeves, who has the answer or the information inside him. He's the solution to whatever the problem is. Then you have a gang of people after him, kind of like Mr. Smith and all the other people in the Matrix. And then you also have a low-tech group outside of the system trying to help the protagonist succeed. If that doesn't sound very similar to the Matrix, I don't know what does. But so Johnny goes in and he picks up the data. They throw it in his brain, and then he somehow runs afoul of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Not really sure how that came about at all. Hey, Chicken Hawk, good to have you, brother. Always good to see Chicken Hawk in here. So in this film, this is crazy, okay? Johnny Mnemonic asks at one point, he says, can you pass me an iPhone? And a while back, Twitter or Reddit or something went absolutely bonkers over that because this took place 12 years before the first iPhone was released. However, he was not looking for an iPhone. He was looking for an EYE phone. The guy hands it to him, and it's like a single eyepiece mounted head-eye interface system. They called it an iPhone, which was kind of cool. And if you watch it with the subtitles on Netflix today, it actually says iPhone. I'm sure that's just one of those automated spelling things, but I thought it was kind of cool. So I had to check the math on this. Johnny Mnemonic, I'm not sure. I didn't look how much the human brain technically could hold, but this was one of those films that really perpetuated the fact that, the myth that humans only use 10% of their brain. So he goes in and they're like, we have a really large file that we need you to carry in your brain. It's so large that it'll probably kill you. And he says, I'll do it. And he goes, what is it? The size of the Library of Congress? And they go, well, it is pretty big, 320 gigabytes. So nowadays you could take 320 gigabytes and put that on something the size of a micro SD card and, hide it inside your ear or behind your ear or in your hair or anything, right? So this was a massive, whopping 320 gigabytes because I think when they wrote this, they decided that they were going to pick some astronomical, asinine amount because in 1995, when this was built, when this was put together, the average hard drive was 50 megabytes. So you do the math, 320 gigabytes to them was massive. And now it's, yeah, I know, Pipin's like LOL, 320 gigabytes. So for the record, the Library of Congress data alone is 100 terabytes roughly, just for the books, not pictures or anything else. So I had to laugh when they said a massive, whopping 320 gigabytes that will absolutely, destroy your brain. Nate Lemaster says, yeah, let's bring that up. 320 gigabytes is like a 5-minute 4K video. I know. And in 1995, it would have been equal to, let's see, 60. I can't do the math there. 600. Yeah, probably around 600 computers, roughly. So, I mean, how crazy is that? Like I said, it's like Strange Days. It doesn't really hold up that well compared to similar films made just a few years later. I mean, you watch Johnny Mnemonic from 1995, and then you watch The Matrix 4 years later. And The Matrix, for the most part, still holds up today. The effects in that were incredible. It's crazy how different 4 years made everything. But the effects in this were cheesy. The story was cool. You know, it had a bit of kung fu and stuff in it. But it's worth watching. Becky and I went back and watched it a couple of years ago. And it is cheesy, but it's fun. And it is, again, kind of that 90s shit hit the fan, post-apocalyptic, cyberpunk, whatever you want to call it, kind of look. And yeah, it's fun. It's a fun little journey for sure. And yeah, and there you go. Chicken Hawk says tech never ages well. It's true. When you try to do things, let's see, go back and watch the first Jurassic Park. And they had so many practical effects in that. They had some digital, but very, very little. And they used it sparingly, and they used it to augment the effects. The original Jurassic Park, in my mind, looks better than Jurassic Park 2 or 3, and in some senses looks better than the latest Jurassic Park that just came out. So when effects are done right and they're mixed with practical effects, they hold up really well. But when you're trying to do bleeding edge technology, within 5 years, what was bleeding edge, leading edge is all of a sudden at the back of the pack, and you're hooped. It doesn't age well. That's why I'm a huge fan of practical effects for sure. So let's bring me back up here. So that was number 4. Number 3, give me a second. We will bring this up. Anybody have any other suggestions for SHTF 90s films? I will take them as we go along. So number 3 is, this is a good one. This was actually one of my favorites. Outbreak. And before we go on, Pipin says, I'm still waiting on my hoverboard that should be out about now from Back to the Future. Yeah, well, they've never solved the problem of not being able to hover over water, because everybody knows hoverboards don't work over water. So yeah, it happens. Outbreak. If you haven't seen it, it holds up really well. And I think the reason this film holds up so well is because there was, no special effects in it. I mean, there were some, medical and blood special effects, but there was no techie-based special effects that could date it really well. It had top-of-the-line cast when it came out in 1995. So the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first 3 films were all released in 95. I don't know what that tells you about what I'm listing here, but the other ones weren't. So rated in 1995. And again, rated R, as you can imagine, 2 hours, 7 minutes long. It had a 59 on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and a 56 from the audience, which means they're about even. Chris Dixon, I agree. Yes. Renee Russo, she was definitely something else. Nate Lemaster says, Outbreak. I love that movie. Waiting for a town to get nuked over a virus. Yeah, I always thought that. So you're going to let a virus that will eventually burn itself out. You're going to nuke it so that whatever the ground is stays radioactive for the next 100 years, right? So yeah, I know exactly. Pipin says, Back to the Future sounds like a medic movie that has a flashback of a trauma medic. That's pretty good. Yep. Dustin Hoffman, Renee Russo, Morgan Freeman, Cuba Gooding Jr. It had a killer. It also had Kevin Spacey and Donald Sutherland in it. So it was, it was a good movie. It had a $50 million budget, and it made almost 4 times that. It made $190 million worldwide. And it was the one that I kind of laugh, but it's one of the films that started the trend of viral outbreak movies being blamed on the damn primates every single time for years afterwards. Every time there's an outbreak, like 28 days later, it's always blamed on the poor monkeys. I feel bad for them. They get the short end of the stick. So in 2020, March 2020, we all know what happened then. All of a sudden, Outbreak becomes a breakout hit once again. It reaches the top 10 in Netflix streaming and has a metric shit ton of articles written about it, simply because we're a sucker for punishment, and we like our fiction like we like our reality. And everybody decided to watch Outbreak over again. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Becky and I went back and watched it at the same time. So what's really scary about this? Chicken Hawk says monkeypox. Absolutely. So this film was really scary because it took what was a bloodborne pathogen and it eventually went airborne to the point where even in enclosed hospital rooms, it was making its way through the air ducts. Like, you could not get away from this. It was, it's scary. This film makes me, it always gives me a little bit of anxiety. Let's put it that way. And it came out right at the height of Ebola fever. Oh, geez, that's the wrong term to use, Tim, because people get a fever and die from Ebola. But I remember in the mid-90s, I remember being out in my buddy's driveway shooting hoops. We had the radio on, and they started talking about this virus called Ebola that would cause people to bleed out of their eyes and drop dead and have a nasty fever. And then like a year later, this movie came out, something very similar. At the beginning, there is an intro that shows a virus under a microscope. They actually use the Ebola virus for that. And yeah, it's Chicken Hawk says, and it shows what the government is willing to do. Yeah, it sure does. And it shows what they're willing to do without really giving a whole lot of thought behind it. Yeah, it is. It's pretty intense, especially toward the end. Like, I don't want to give it all away because it's definitely worth watching. But the little girl makes friends with that cute little monkey you see there. Of course, the monkey is the carrier for the virus. And the only way to catch the monkey is to get the little girl to go in her backyard and play with the monkey. So you're sitting there watching this and you're like, holy shit. Yeah, it was scary. It absolutely was. It made medical drama quite interesting. You know, there was a lot of politics behind the scenes, and there was kind of a plot B or a B plot about, I want to say, I think Donald Sutherland, anyway, it might have been Donald Sutherland and Morgan Freeman ended up blowing up a village over an infection like this years prior. And of course, this was them and basically not wanting the truth to come out because I believe this was the virus. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of kind of behind the scenes things happening in this movie that to keep you interested. And then of course, some of the main characters get sick and die. We don't want to ruin that for you. Pipin says clean the town means a whole new thing now. It sure does, my friends. It's kind of sad. Like I said, it holds up really well. It's still a very tense movie. You know, I hate to say it, but you know, I always enjoyed Rene Russo, but I didn't think she'd necessarily win an Oscar. But to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of Dustin Hoffman either, even though I guess wasn't he the Rain Man? He did good in that, right? Pipin says Outbreak brings the TV show ER to a whole new level. But yeah, overall, it had a great cast, had a great premise. It's something that will still keep you on the edge of your seat, and you won't sit there and roll your eyes the whole time thinking, my God, are they really going to take a mini disc and insert that in his brain? So if you don't have the ability, you know, of willing suspension of disbelief, then this is more up your alley. Let's put it that way. And it's a good film. Like I said, still held up really, really well. All right. So let's go back to the big screen. Anybody want to guess either one of the next two movies? I will tell you that there's a good chance that you probably haven't seen at least one and maybe both of these two films. So I'm kind of interested in seeing what you think, because they are actually two of my favorite 90s films. Okay, so before we go too far, this list is kind of weird. So the next film, if you were to ask me to make a list on my top 100 films, the number 2 of this list tonight will be on it. Number 1 won't be. But in some ways, my number 1 pick tonight, I enjoy more than this next film. I know I'm being cryptic, but I'm going to explain it to you here in a minute. So number 2 is, and I know this is an impossible list for you guys to guess because I could go anywhere with this shit because it's my list and I made it up. Now, it is Dark City. This is a fucking incredible movie. Not one that Becky enjoys. Let's put it this way. So much so, she really doesn't like it. We were in the city. They have a 70 millimeter old-fashioned theater in Edmonton, and they were playing Dark City. And I couldn't talk Becky into going. It's okay. But I love this film. This is, in the 90s, there's Dark City, 13th Floor, and The Matrix that all came out within a couple of years of each other. They all have very, very similar themes. They're all an absolute sci-fi mindfuck. I hate to use that term, but they are. And they all hold up just as well, if not better today than the day they were made. Dark City was a huge flop when it first came out. Huge. But it's become kind of a cult classic, and we'll talk about it a bit. So, any guess on the rating? It was rated R, of course, 100 minutes long. Now, it had a budget of $27 million, and it made $27.2 million in the theater. So once again, when a movie breaks even, it's considered a flop in Hollywood. So it was not considered very well done. It wasn't hugely liked by a lot of critics, but one of the critics that loved it was Roger Ebert. And I want to say he might have been the guy who got me interested in this film, because I didn't see it when it first came out. I was probably at college or just getting ready for college. So I seen it just post-college, probably like 2003, 2004, and it blew my mind. It is kind of a noir detective story that you think is based in the 40s and 50s, but there's a bunch of alien type people called tuners that every night make everybody fall asleep, and they completely rework the entire city. And if you're like, holy shit, that sounds good, it is. I love it. Written and directed by Alex Proyas, who was just coming off the success of The Crow. And the crazy thing is, Brandon Lee, who was in The Crow, of course, Bruce Lee's son, who got killed in the tragic accident, was actually lined up to play the main role in this film. And of course, unfortunately, that didn't happen. Roger Ebert, one half of Siskel and Ebert, called this the best film of 1998. He loved it so much that he actually recorded an audio commentary for it. Now, I could be wrong. I believe this is the only film that Roger Ebert ever recorded an audio commentary for, and it is good. Now, it stars Kiefer Sutherland and, you ready for this? Chris Dixon, Jennifer Connelly. Probably my favorite of the leading ladies in all of these films. I just had a thing for Jennifer Connelly back in the day. Just a pretty lady who could act her butt off. Really good actress at the time. And, she'd been around a long time. And she's still acting. So, and I believe she was in 13th Floor, but I might be wrong about that. It was filmed in Australia, and a ton of the set pieces were actually sold to the Matrix production and used in that film as well, which is kind of cool. Pippin says he misses The Crow. Yeah, The Crow defined an entire subgenre at my high school. There was tons of people who were into it. It was kind of that depressed goth kind of look, but The Crow was a damn good film back in the day. The film Dark City is inspired by the old Chris Dixon, oh my, he says, the old silent classic Metropolis. I may do an episode on silent film someday. And you might say, holy shit, Tim, are you serious? Yeah, there are some good ones out there, but Metropolis is probably the classic. It is so, so good. It's a sci-fi masterpiece where there is no dialogue, of course. No audibly spoken dialogue. This film was inspired by both Metropolis and The Twilight Zone, and is yet another film that deals with the concept of injectable memories and the ability or the lack of ability to trust your own brain. Chris Dixon wants to know if my episode on silent films will be silent. Yes, it will be 57 minutes of me just sitting here sipping on my drink with old-timey piano music playing in the background. It'll be fun. So this is one of those films you need to watch multiple times. It can be interpreted in as many ways as you could if you wanted to. Nate says I should totally do it silent. Yeah, it would be awesome. We'll have old-timey piano music playing, and all I'll have is dialogue cards coming up. It'll be like a PowerPoint presentation that we can all get drunk to. It'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, this so if anybody out there hasn't seen it, oh, hey, Martinson family, good to have you. Chicken Hawk says, can't wait for the podcast version of that. All you hear is a player piano and this sound. ice rattling. That'll be it. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be my either my most listened to or my most hated episode. We'll see. It is deep, deep science fiction with a nihilistic look at life. It's crazy. It has some very strong similarities to another one of my favorite films, The Truman Show, which deals with a man contained in what turns out to be a fairly small community, maybe unbeknownst to himself when he starts out, both trying to escape for a beach. Truman trying to get to Fiji, and the protagonist in this film trying to get to Shell Beach. The whole movie's dark. It was filmed completely indoors on sound stages, so they're at least able to, work during the day. But it is twisted. It's weird. It's kind of a murder mystery, kind of a sci-fi, and the ending is bonkers. It's so bonkers that the studio forced them to rewrite it just a little bit. And I am not going to ruin it for you, but they do make it to Shell Beach. That's all I'll say. You guys are going to enjoy it. If there's two films to watch on this list tonight, it's this one and my number one film. But this is so good. I don't even know how to explain it. If you're into deep, dark science fiction, then this is worth the watch. It's worth about 6 watches if you ask me. But it's not for everybody. It is definitely a split mix. Reading some of the commentary from Alex Proyas, the director, he said, once they put a film together, they get a rough cut. They do a bunch of test screenings for audiences. And he said it was 100% split. Well, wouldn't that be 50-50, right, Tim? Basically, 50% of the people loved it. 50% of the people were so fucking confused that they didn't know what to say. And he knew he didn't have a hit on his hands. But of course, in typical studio fashion, the studio come in, they meddled. They said, you need to take this out. They made him put like a 2-minute voiceover at the beginning, which gives away almost all the twists in the film. And they made him install a force field at one point. Let's put it that way. But there is a director's cut. So if you take the time to watch this film, search out and make sure it's the director's cut. You will not be disappointed. Absolutely. So that was number 2. Nate says, The Truman Show was good, and sometimes a conspiracy theorist in me comes out and wonders if that could be real. I have no doubt that at some point in the not too distant future, some, television / media conglomerate is going to try to legally adopt somebody and do this exact thing with them. It'll be maybe in the name of science, maybe in the name of money. I don't know. Will it be interesting? I'm not sure. It'll be voyeuristic for sure. I mean, Truman Show itself is, that's a good movie. Oh, I love that movie. Somehow I got to work that into one of my episodes because it is, it's so good. 1998, I think. And, it's just, it's got that night. It uses the 1950s suburb aesthetic and cheese and sitcom-y feel to give you this real unsettled feeling to it for sure. Ready Player 2, Ready Player 1 actually said, okay. I tried watching it. I didn't enjoy it, but I may need to give it another go. But I love Truman Show. When his neighbor says, "Good morning, Truman," and he says, "Good morning, good afternoon, and if I don't see you, good evening and good night." I always love that. Absolutely. Excuse me. So with that, we have made it to video number 1 of this evening. And I'm going to bet, all right, first off, was there anybody out there who actually had seen Dark City before? Because like I said, it's one of my favorites. And you might all say, Tim, you're just some friggin' weirdo who likes weird old science fiction. And I won't lie. You're probably right. But this film tonight may or may not be something you've seen, but this was, it came out in 1996. It's rated R. It is yet another film that I watched on my friend Lynn's couch in their living room with the floor model TV. It was a great film. And it's this film coming up is a film that was made to be watched on VHS. The kind of grainy, washed out look to a VHS film just suits this to a T. And when you see the cast, I don't think there's much more of a 90s cast than what this is right here. And again, Chris, another leading lady for you, my friend. So here it is, without further ado, my favorite, and this, we'll get into it, just hang on. The Trigger Effect. And if you guys haven't seen this, I don't blame you, because it is kind of an obscure 1996 rated R release, an hour and 34 minutes long, had an $8 million budget, managed to make $3.6 million in the box office. Now, the cast has Elizabeth Shue coming hot off her at least Oscar nomination for Leaving Las Vegas. I'm not sure if she won an Oscar for it or not, but she's a good actress, a great actress. But she is all about the 90s. Kyle MacLachlan. Some people may know him for Showgirls. Most people will know him for the David Fincher TV show, Twin Peaks. He was well known in that. And then you got Dermot Mulroney lurking in the background. So 3 kind of middle of the road 90s actors who seem to be everywhere in mid-90s. This film, let's just say, it's one of the few films that I felt when I watched it, and it stuck with me all these years later. I made a list. I think I got about, let's see if I can find them here. There was about 5 films back in the day that I watched that really stuck with me. We'll get to them in a minute, but, well, you know what? The Road, The Gray, Drive, this film, and Hereditary were all films that when I saw it, I felt them. There's something about these. And I think, even though I was 15 when this film came out, but I remember it and watching it again years later. And I've watched it a few times since, to the point where I wanted to watch it so bad. Becky and I found it one night and we actually paid to rent it, which is pretty rare for us online. It's a great film. It is probably one of the most realistic kind of shit hits the fan, societal breakdown. I feel like this is exactly what would happen in the first 2 or 3 days of an unknown power outage. So let's talk about the film just a little bit. What's cool about it is it could take place today just as easily as it took place in the mid-90s, because the whole shtick is the power goes out in the middle of the day. Nobody knows why, and all forms of communication are down. All people have is hearsay, rumors, and everything else. It's a great film. It's a film that, I don't want to say not a lot happens, but this is one of those films where people basically sit around and speculate about what's happening, why it happened, how long it's going to last, and how they should protect themselves. Nate says he came in at number 4, and I didn't see number 5, but so far I've only seen one of these. Number 5, Nate, was it not Johnny Mnemonic? It was Strange Days, the movie that takes place December 31st, 1999, but it was filmed in 1995. So, The Trigger Effect. Have you guys seen my interview with Apartment Prepper? She started a movie club for preppers a while back, and this was her first film. I knew there's a reason I really liked her, because this is a great film. It's just a film about lack of knowledge, about absolute and total anxiety, and just people sitting around thinking, what the hell am I going to do? If you guys like the old Twilight Zone, it is 100% ripped off from the script of The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. You know, it's a black and white episode where people are outside, the power goes out, nobody knows why. Everybody wonders, everybody blames everybody else, and it's totally an homage to that for sure. It's also based on a 1978 TV show. I learned this doing research for this episode. The TV show was called The Trigger Effect. And the show was called Connections, and Trigger Effect was the first episode. And it was about the 1960s blackout and all the things that had to happen in New York City for it to happen. It was a well-known blackout with a huge crime wave that went on at the same time. So the film is very, very claustrophobic because it takes place just in one little cul-de-sac. And the whole idea is it opens up in a mall, just everybody doing their everyday shopping, completely oblivious to anything that's going on. And they're out shopping, and all of a sudden, the power goes out. So people have to sit around, and their air conditioning's not working. So they're getting hot, and they're getting sweaty, and they're getting stressed out, and they don't know what to do. They have a sick kid who needs asthma or medicine. They go to the pharmacy, and they can't buy it because their computers aren't working. Can you imagine in 1996 this happened? Nowadays, they would look at you and think, well, sorry, but we can't even take your money anymore. But it's crazy. The fear is just the constant unknown. Everybody's sitting around trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So Elizabeth Shue, Kyle MacLachlan are husband and wife. And, a little ways into the movie, Kyle MacLachlan's brother, Dermot Mulroney, shows up. And he's kind of the black sheep. And, of course, unfortunately, there's a bit of a love triangle in this film as well. So you can take that or leave it. There was really no need for that. The movie stands on its own anyway. Like I said, it was not a box office hit. Had a budget of $8 million. It made 3.6 worldwide. So that's definitely, no matter how Hollywood tries to do the accounting, that is a failure. But it has become a bit of a cult classic, a very, very lesser known one for sure. But yeah, it was neat. So, of course, the brother shows up. He brings a gun. He's like, hey, we need to, we need to make sure we protect ourselves here, guys. And there are these, yuppies in the city that know nothing about anything, and they're just scared to death. And the whole film is them basically trying to decide, okay, do we bug in or do we bug out? And eventually, of course, they decide, hey, we're going to get in the car and we're going to drive off. And the whole film is just unknown. You don't know why the power's out. You don't know why the radios aren't working. You don't know why the TVs aren't working. Cops never show up. Eventually somebody kind of breaks into their home or onto their street and gets shot. And you're just seeing this collective degeneration of society in the span of about 3 days. And I think of all the films on this list, this is by far the most realistic. And it is one of the ones, to me, that feels the most plausible that could happen like that. Day one, everybody's polite. Everybody's like, hey, yeah, let's have a barbecue and we'll share our food. But boy, by day two, people are starting to get stressed and anxious and irritable, the whole works. And people are just starting to get pissed off and not knowing what to do. And that's when people really start going crazy. And of course, the crazies are out there as well. And the cool thing is about this film is it takes you back to that mid-90s time before everybody was absolutely stuck to a device. So I don't know how you would play this off today. I mean, it could just be as simple as like the Rogers outage that we had earlier this year in Canada, where a whole bunch of our technology just stopped working simply because either it was hacked or a bug got into it. I don't know. But, if this had went on long term in this film, it could have been blamed on anything from a CME to an EMP to whatever it happened to be. But it was definitely leaning on the Y2K anxiety that was coming up. This was about 3 years away from when Y2K was supposed to happen. So people were like, hey, what would happen if technology just got turned off? And you look at this in 1996 and you think, holy shit, how much worse would it be? 26 years later? To me, it's just a film that you feel more than you experience. And it's hard to watch this film and not want to be a prepper. Let's put it that way. So if you're looking for one, it can be picked up in, bargain basement bins. I think it only finally got a Blu-ray release in 2020. It originally was released on VHS in 97, and I believe it got a DVD release in 99. But then it was 21 years before it came out on Blu-ray. And even then it was only dumped on a dual feature, them stupid Blu-rays that have two movies and the picture's like half and half. But if you can track this film down, it is 100% worth getting out there and seeing it, because I love it. I do. And again, it's full of kind of 90s, but there's something about that. I don't know. It just takes you back to a simpler time where people weren't, well, here we are sitting on a live stream talking about technology, but it takes you back to a simpler time when people weren't connected to absolutely everything. People were still scared of the effects of losing it, but they weren't 100% plugged into the matrix like maybe we are now. And I think something like this is all the more precedent today. to watch and to see and to learn from. And if you come away from this and not think, hey, I should be a little more prepared, well, I don't think you have a heartbeat or a pulse, but that's just me. So yeah, that was my 5, guys. I have a ton more 90s shit hits fan films. I've got, oh man, I went through, I don't know if I have my list with me right here or not, but I got a ton of films. So I've got a list coming up down the road. Martinson, the movie it's paired with, Martinson asked what the movie it was paired with was. It was an absolute, no, it was horrible. It had nothing to do with the movie itself. Let's see if we can find it here. Trigger Effect Blu-ray was paired with a film called Body Count with David Caruso, John Leguizamo, Ving Rhames, Donnie Wahlberg, and Forrest Whitaker. So yeah, absolutely no reason to be paired with that film, but I had to look it up. It's kind of a shame because this film was a great film. And it was directed by one of Hollywood's most prodigious writers. He wrote the original Jurassic Park and a ton other films. This was the film that he went to Steven Spielberg and he's like, hey, I'd like to direct a film. And he said, okay, go ahead. And then it flopped miserably. And so he never directed another film. So there it is. But yeah, it was fun. So some of the lists I got coming up. I've never seen Body Count. Chris Dixon has, and he says it's a terrible movie. So let's see. I've got a list of the most realistic shit hits fan films. I've got the best conspiracy movies. I've got the best zombie films. I've got 5 more bunker films. I've got about 15 more shit hits fan 90s films. I've got, let's see, and a bunch of outbreak viral infection films so far. So, and I've also got an idea for doing an episode on the Zombieland rules. So we got a whole bunch. We can work our way through like crazy. So yeah, you know what, guys? I got to say, what a great turnout, because when you're in Canada, it's easy to forget that this is Thanksgiving Thursday, and I hope you guys enjoy your turkey. I hope you enjoy all of your knife and gun fights at Target tomorrow, and I hope you really enjoy all of your college football, because this seems to be the busiest, most fun holiday of the year for you guys. And thanks for everybody who dropped in. This was fun. I'm going to try to do. Nate says real shit hit the fan list would be interesting. Yeah. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but Trigger Effect will be on there again because it is one of the most realistic shit hit the fan films. And yeah, I'll put a full list of that together. I like to do about 5 because it seems to fit this hour-long list really well. But I'm going to try to shoot for about once a month doing one of these film episodes, just like History of Prepping, just like my Empty Container series. It's kind of fun to have things to look forward to. And it really, Chicken Hawk says, don't be jealous of our gunfights. Yeah, I know. We just take Nerf guns to Walmart with us, right? But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Like I said, tomorrow, Friday, will be a Ramblings from the Road episode in the podcast feed, because that's how I'm doing it now. Saturday, there'll be no live stream. Who is that? Dickus Longerman. Hey, he bald and got no wife for life. I don't know who you are, but hey, good for you. Love you. Great to have you here. Little Dick. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, Saturday we'll have no live stream, but there will be a pre-recorded. Now, if you've already seen it, you have, but if you haven't in the audio, it's going to be Kayla from Tactical Response. I've been sitting on that episode for the better part of a month now, and I thought it was finally time to get it in the podcast feed. Give it a re-listen if you want. But Saturday evening, we are going to have Michael Jordan from Cold War Prepper. No worries, brother. The replay will be here for you. I'm glad you showed up. We got Michael Jordan from a bee-friendly company coming on talking about all things bumblebees, honeybees, whatever. So if you want to learn how to make mead, or you just want to learn how to, raise bees without getting stung and dying, he'll be your man. Plus, him and I can have a talk about having famous names and the fun that it causes, right? So, I mean, Tim Cook isn't maybe quite as famous as Michael Jordan, but, the guy who owns Apple is something. So that's it for me, guys. I appreciate you dropping by. If you got any requests for movie lists, send them my way. And as always, you know the routine, right? Stay happy, stay healthy, and keep drinking old fashioned. I mean, and have a great week.